So let's just get right to it. Can the AI we're all using every single day, the ones writing our emails, answering our weirdest questions, even making art, can it actually think? I mean, really think? It's probably one of the biggest questions of our time. And today, we're going to dig in and try to unpack it. Okay, so take a look at this. The line on your screen, it translates to something like, there is a sadness in the sunset and the shades of gold and crimson melting on the horizon. I mean, that sounds beautiful, right? Really poetic. The crazy thing? A human didn't write that. An AI did.
And right there, that's the huge paradox we're going to get into. The system that came up with those words, does it have any idea what sadness feels like? Does it know what a horizon even is? Or is it just an unbelievably good parrot, a sophisticated mimic? This is the massive gap we're talking about, the difference between perfect performance and real, genuine understanding.
All right, so to start peeling back the layers on this big question, let's start with the first, most obvious layer, behavioral intelligence. The simplest way to look at it, if it acts intelligent, well, maybe it is intelligent.
This whole idea was actually formalized way back in 1950 by the legendary Alan Turing. He came up with his famous Turing Test, which is, a really simple but powerful idea. He basically said, look, if you're having a text conversation with something, and you honestly can't tell if it's a machine or a real person, then for all practical purposes, we should just call it intelligent. And here is where it gets really wild. Modern language models, think ChatGPT, well, recent studies are showing they're not just getting close, they're consistently passing the Turing test. They are so good, so fluent, so human-like that most people in these tests are completely fooled. They walk away convinced they were just chatting with another human.
Okay, so that creates a real puzzle, doesn't it? If these AIs are passing the test, why are the very people who build them so hesitant to say they're actually thinking? Why won't they say they're conscious? It tells you that behavior, no matter how convincing it is, might not be the whole picture.
So to get why they're so cautious, we have to peel back another layer of this onion. We need to look past what it's doing on the outside and try to figure out what's going on the inside.
And that brings us to one of the most famous and, frankly, mind-bending thought experiments in all of philosophy. It's called the Chinese room from the philosopher John Searle. And it is just a brilliant way to show why perfect output doesn't automatically equal understanding.
Okay, so imagine this. You're in a locked room, and you don't know a single word of Chinese. Slips of paper with Chinese characters get passed under the door. Now you have this enormous rulebook, a huge book, and it tells you exactly what to do. It says, if you see this set of symbols, go find that set of symbols in the book and pass it back out. You follow the rules perfectly. From the outside, it looks like fluent, intelligent Chinese conversation is coming out of that room. It seems like the room understands Chinese. But you, the person inside, you don't understand a thing. You're just matching symbols. You're just a pattern matcher.
And this thought experiment just perfectly highlights a really critical idea in philosophy, the difference between syntax and semantics. The person in the room is an absolute master of syntax. They know all the rules, the grammar, the structure. But they have zero, and I mean zero, semantics. They have no clue what any of it actually means.
And that leads to Searle's big, powerful point. A perfect simulation of understanding is not the same thing as actual understanding. And this is a huge argument that maybe, just maybe, today's giant language models are nothing more than incredibly sophisticated, high-tech Chinese rooms. They're just manipulating symbols based on rules, without any real grasp of what those symbols mean.
Okay, so this pushes us even deeper, right? Down to a really fundamental philosophical question. Where does meaning even come from? Like, at all?
Well, philosophers have this term for a special property our minds have. It's called intentionality. And it sounds complicated, but it's actually super simple. It just means our thoughts are always about something. Think about it. You don't just believe, you believe something about the weather. You don't just want, you want a cup of coffee. This aboutness is a core feature of a thinking mind.
So to get even more specific, thinkers on this topic now make this really helpful distinction. On one hand, you have mental intentionality. This is the real deal. It comes from inside a mind. It's a genuine belief, a genuine desire. But then there's linguistic intentionality. This is something that's just borrowed from a language system that already has meaning. So when an AI says, I believe that, it's not expressing an internal feeling of belief. It's just using a pattern it learned from all the text it was trained on.
So, putting that all together, it's pretty likely that AI doesn't have that genuine mental intentionality. But what it can do, and do perfectly, is tap into our language, this amazing system we built, filled with all our meaning, and use it to create things that are incredibly meaningful to us.
And I think this is such a great way to think about its role right now. It's not a mind that originates meaning, it's more like a perfect, flawless mirror that reflects the massive, complex system of meaning that we, as humans, have already created.
All right, now we're going to the deepest layer yet, the final frontier, the one thing that might just be an impossible barrier for AI: consciousness.
And look, this isn't about crunching data or getting the right answer anymore. This is about subjective, first-person experience, what it feels like to be you. There's a philosophical term for this, qualia. It's the what-it's-likeness of an experience. You know, the actual experience of seeing the color red, or feeling a sharp pain, or smelling fresh coffee. An AI can describe the chemical compounds in coffee perfectly, but can it experience that warm, rich aroma? That's the question.
The philosopher David Chalmers came up with another incredible thought experiment to get at this problem. It's called fading qualia. So try to imagine this. What if, slowly, one by one, every single neuron in your brain was replaced by a tiny little silicon chip that did the exact same job perfectly?
Now, from the outside, nothing would change. You'd still talk the same, walk the same, react to things in exactly the same way. But the real, terrifying question is, what's happening on the inside? Would your inner world, your actual conscious experience, just slowly fade away into nothingness?
And here's the unsettling part. We have no idea what the answer is. We just don't know. And the fact that we can't rule out that fading possibility, it points to something really profound. Maybe consciousness isn't just about information processing. Maybe it's tied to our specific biological, kind of messy wetware in a way that we just don't understand yet.
Okay, so after peeling back all these layers, from its behavior to its understanding, all the way down to consciousness, where does that leave us with the thinking machine?
Well, we've really put AI through 3 major philosophical tests, right? The Turing Test looked at its behavior, and yeah, it's a fantastic actor. But then the Chinese room tested its understanding and showed us that acting smart isn't the same as being smart. And finally, fading qualia pushed us to think about consciousness and left us with this deep, nagging doubt that a perfect copy could still just be an empty shell.
And that leaves us with one last big, provocative question to chew on. If a machine doesn't think the way a human does, but it can access and process all of human knowledge better than any single one of us ever could, maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe the real question isn't, can machines think, but what do we really mean by thinking anyway?